Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday with All Indiana Politics. We want to start today by talking education and the new state budget. The Indiana House has approved the GOP budget plan that calls for the adding of $438 million to education spending over the next 2 years. But critics point out that much of that money will not go to public schools, but instead to school vouchers and charter programs. A growing number of public school districts are publicly opposing the plan, and now 3 former state school leaders are joining them.
We welcome in now Dr. Sue Ellen Reed Goddard, who has served 16 years as Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction. Dr. Goddard, you joined 2 other former state superintendents opposing the voucher and charters bills, saying in a letter that they open the door to unacceptable practices. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think the first thing is that the legislature is responsible, according to our Constitution, to establish a system of common schools that are open to all and charge no tuition. That's their prime directive. That is the group that they are supposed to be taking care of. And we really appreciate the money that we get. But in this time of the pandemic, teachers and administrators have academic and operational challenges that they've never faced before. And then we find out that the money that we thought, as so far as the governor's budget was concerned, was going to be directed to our public schools, and particularly with making sure that our teachers are well compensated. To find that that's going to be diverted, it's not, the timing is just really terrible. And I think the General Assembly needs to step up and really give the support to the public schools where 94% of our children are educated. They need to step up and give the support now that they need.
But what do you say about the school choice argument? Supporters of this plan say the money allows parents to have a greater choice in their child's education. How do you answer those who say this lets parents get their kids out of struggling schools?
Well, let me say, first of all, that our public schools do educate 94% of our students. And we have in the state of Indiana wonderful public schools. We have some schools that are struggling. The reason they're struggling is because the students are struggling. And the kinds of students who maybe don't have the kind of parental support that they need at home, maybe they don't have access to technology and all the things that some of the other students have. They may not even have adequate food, clothing, and shelter. And so at school, we have to do everything we can to help support those students so that they can learn. And that means we have extra things to do to attend to the needs that they have. So instead of giving us support and helping us do our jobs, because we do know more about how people learn than we've ever known before. We know better how to train teachers. Our teacher training institutions are doing so much better job than what they used to do, like when I was coming through the system. And so all of these things were poised to make a real difference. And now is the time for us to do it. When our students come back to school, when all of them are in school full time, or we may still have some that do some distance learning because of illness or whatever, we need to be strong and we need to be able to meet all those needs. And it takes extra ingenuity and extra funds to make all that happen. And so if we're going to be able to pull people up and also at the same time to challenge those kids who are above and beyond where they need to be, and we don't want them to be held back by others that may be struggling. We want everybody to move forward. And so in order to do all of the good things that we know how to do, we need the support to make that happen.
Well, speaking of funds, we've heard a lot of talk over the past 2 years about teacher salaries in Indiana. In your opinion, are Indiana's teachers underpaid? And then does the plan before lawmakers right now give enough for pay raises?
We are among the lowest ranking states so far as the amount of compensation that we give our teachers. Indiana has always sought to move up, to be better, to do better work than some of the other states. We're near the bottom. We don't want to be there. I know some of our I know of several special needs teachers that went to a neighboring state because they could get a lot more money, and that is sad. Teachers most generally get into this business because they feel it's almost like a calling. They feel that they have that need and that ability to teach. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people could be teachers and still be sure that all of the needs of their families could be met? And we've always been low on our pay, and our teachers realize they're not going to get rich being teachers. But we have to at least have adequate compensations. We have to be able to be competitive with the other states that are surrounding us, as well as with the rest. We had teachers going to Texas and teachers going all over the place because they wanted to find, better salaries and do better. So we just need to step up and do what we need to do to provide for all of the children of all of our families in the state of Indiana.
And you think that this plan does or does not include enough for that?
The current plan in 1005 and in Senate Bills 412 and 413, no, they're not what they ought to be. And we have to make sure that the legislators understand how critical the need is. And particularly now, we need to show our support for our public schools.
Dr. Sue Ellen Reed Goddard, thank you so much for your insight and your time.
Thank you.
Republican House Speaker Todd Houston defending the plan. In a statement, he says whether it's including an additional $438 million in new money for K-12 public education or $250 million in broadband expansion grants, we're focused on helping Hoosier students, families, and workers. Our budget also provides pandemic relief through new or expanded grant programs that focus on improving public health, helping students recover from learning loss due to the pandemic, and supporting businesses that are struggling to keep their doors open. Coming up, the move to make Indiana more equitable and inclusive after a summer of demands for social justice. Meet the state's first ever equity officer next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. One of the state's newest cabinet members on the job right now, Governor Eric Holcomb, naming Kara Herring as the state's first ever Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer. The goal? Help eliminate systematic bias throughout Indiana. For the first time, we're getting to talk to Herring. She's with our Katira Winfrey.
All right, we are welcoming Kara Herring to our show. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be with you.
All right, so this is a new role that you're jumping into, the first in the state. What does it mean to you to be a part of this?
Well, I'm incredibly honored. I'm from South Bend, Indiana, so I am a Hoosier at my core, went to Purdue University, went to Valparaiso University School of Law, and it is just an incredible honor to serve my state in this new capacity. Extremely excited to see what comes of it. This is obviously a very first step in many things to come, but it's an important first step, and I'm really, really looking forward to leading this charge.
And so we came about to this role with everything we saw over the summer. How did that inspire you, or how did watching all that unfold tell you, maybe I should be a part of this?
It's so interesting. When I was watching Governor Holcomb's equity address back in August, and he talked about what happened with George Floyd in Minnesota, and he shared about some of the challenges that we face as a state, I was listening and I was very pregnant and quite comfortable in my former position, but it really tugged at my heartstrings when he started to talk about the importance of looking at the root causes of disparities within our state, not just reacting to the symptoms. And as someone who has really devoted much of my professional career to looking at equity and inclusion and opportunity. That really spoke to me. One of the other things that he said was, it's really great for us to use our constitutional right to protest, but it's important that we do that in a peaceful way to really bring attention to issues. And he said, let's not throw a brick, let's use a brick to build a better foundation for our future for Hoosiers. And that really resonated with me as someone who is from this state. And once I saw that address from Governor Holcomb, I thought, you know what, I will definitely put my name in the hat to see if I can be a part of the team to really address these inequities within Indiana.
And I'd like to go back to when you were first named to this position. One of the things you said, you called it an incredible opportunity to drive cultural change. The question is Indiana ready for that kind of change?
Well, I'm very hopeful that Indiana is ready. I am not under any type of disillusionment that this will be a walk in the park. There will be uncomfortable conversations, there will be challenging conversations, and there will be disagreements around the topics that we encounter. But I'm a firm believer that, where there is disagreement, there is a choice on whether or not to be disrespectful. And I think if people can understand that we'll have differences of opinion on a lot of these topics, but come together in a way that is open and empathetic to the other side of the conversation, I think we can see some great change. The numbers are out there, they don't lie. We have to really pay attention to the history of our country, the history of how certain systems have been set up and how there's been a disproportionate impact to certain people within our country. And we have to acknowledge that. And we have to say, what can we do as a state to move forward? And so I'm extremely hopeful that people are ready for those conversations. I am under no disillusionment that those conversations will be easy by any means. There will be some challenges, but I think we're all up for the challenge to make our state a better place and create a better quality of life for all Hoosiers.
And I know you are just, you just had your son, so you're just now getting to work. Are there any key things on your to-do list that you want to jump right in and get started on?
Yeah, well, this is week 4 and I'm quite busy. I'm really into the substance of looking at how we create the structure of the office, really talking with all of the agency leads, specifically my fellow cabinet members, and then of course talking with some various external partners. But right now what I'm doing is really setting some goals for the first few months and then for about a year out, and then some more long-term goals to make sure that the work that the CEIOO, that the work that I've been charged with doing can be sustainable. And so we're just in the early stages of that, setting some target completion dates, identifying primary stakeholders and key collaborators. And hopefully in the next few months, I'll have more detail to share around what we're working on.
And you talk about all of the things that you are working on. When will it be apparent to you that, okay, we're making some moves here, we're seeing some changes?
Well, 2 things I would say. First, obviously, we want to start to see the data change. We want to see the data kind of transform and shift, and that's a more long-term goal. That's going to take some time. This is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. But the second thing I think will be very telling is the willingness of individuals to sit down across lines of difference, to come together to make a difference. And when we start to see people who have varying views sit at the table together to have a conversation around equity and improvements for our state, without the tense moments, without the unfortunate situations where we're not hearing one another. When we start to see those moments become more normalized, I think that's when we'll really start to feel like we're making some headway.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kara, for taking some time out of your schedule to talk to us. I know you have a tough job ahead of you, and we wish you well. Thank you again.
Thank you, Katira. It was really nice meeting you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Coming up, accusations of racism and bias inside the General Assembly. We talk about the calls for change among state lawmakers next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in Democrat Brian Gaddy and Abdul Hakim Shabazz, publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Gentlemen, thank you for taking some time. Good to see you. Let's start at the State House on this Sunday and what has transpired over the past week. Black lawmakers, gentlemen, who were booed on the House floor. Speaker Todd Houston apologizing. Brian, is enough being done in response to what happened?
Well, you have to think that that first of all, that's just poor decorum. Why would you boo your colleagues? I mean, you have Representative Greg Porter, Representative Vanessa Summers, Representative Smith. They've served our state honorably for decades. And just because they express their feelings as African-American Hoosier state legislators, lawmakers, and they're being booed by their Republican colleagues, it's just really just another black eye the Indiana Republican Party has sustained, and they deserve it.
Abdul, you're hearing a different version of what went down, I understand.
Yes. First of all, the bill that they were arguing over was a de-annexation bill up in the South Bend area. Not to get in the weeds, we'll let some kids who are in the rural portion of the South Bend School District transfer to another school district for transportation purposes. Where the problem was, and I agree with Brian that the Republicans shouldn't have booed, but at the same time, for Representative Porter, Summers, and Vern Smith to infer that there was some like racial thing behind this legislation was ridiculous. There was nothing racial there. And then they went out in the hallway, and then things got a little ridiculous. And like I said, was it racial? Not at all. But I do think that the pandemic has sort of taken its toll on lawmakers between having to social distance and only talk to each other between glass, that basically everybody just needed to just chill out for a while. So hopefully when they come back on Monday, things will get a lot better back to normal.
Yeah, take a little breather. All right, Abdul, that leads me to my next question directly to both of you. Is there underlying or open racism among lawmakers here in our state? Brian.
Well, I look at it like this: if you have, if you assume 10% of the population is racist, then out of 150 lawmakers, you're going to have probably 15 to have some animosity with African Americans or people of other races. If you just take that 10% number, but at the end of the day, they're good people. They're Hoosiers who represent all 6.7 million Hoosiers who come to represent the state of Indiana, and so that you got to keep in mind. Is there racism? Sure, probably. Is it like open racism and like a Klan rally every day? No.
Your response, Brian?
Well, I do believe the vast majority of state legislators in the Republican and in my party, the Democratic Party, are good, honorable, decent men and women. As Abdul said, is there a small percentage that could be, with any racial animus? I mean, that's going to be possible with anything. But I have to believe, as a Hoosier, that the majority of members of the General Assembly are good, honorable, decent people, and they're not motivated by racism. So I would actually believe the majority of them are not racist.
Gentlemen, I have just a couple minutes left, and we have a lot to get through. So I want to talk quickly about the COVID relief plan. Should $15 minimum wage-wise be a part of it? Abdul, I know you're pretty passionate about this.
No, not at all. Because first of all, minimum wage has nothing to do with COVID relief. Why would you go ahead and put more financial burdens on businesses who are already struggling and suffering? That's kind of point number one. Point number two, less than 3% of our population actually makes the minimum wage. So at the end of the day, who is this really going to help?
Brian?
Well, the last time the minimum wage was raised in this country was July 24, 2009. It went a little over $6 an hour to a little over $7 an hour. 2009. You know how long ago that is? And this old canard my conservative friends always bring out, like Abdul, it's going to hurt small businesses. Well, when you lift the minimum wage, it has a salutary effect of raising wages across the board. So I don't know how long my conservative friends are going to keep using this old canard that the minimum wage hurts jobs, because it does not.
But Brian, the CBO did come out and say that it will cost about 1.5 million jobs, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's that's something that everyone says, and I just don't believe that. And the statistics show that it doesn't hurt with creating jobs overall. Again, this is something that has been said for decades. Every time we Democrats try to raise the minimum wage, our conservative friends say, oh, no, you can't do that. It's only going to affect a small percentage of people, or it's going to cost jobs. Well, guess what? It hasn't, and it won't, because overall, those jobs, even if there is a small percentage of jobs that are lost, overall, small and mid-sized businesses are able to absorb those losses. They do create the jobs. And when the minimum wage is increased, it has the effect of raising salaries across the board. So raising the minimum wage actually has the effect of helping everyone, whether you're a minimum wage worker or not.
Abdul, you want to respond real quick? I have 30 seconds.
Yeah. Like I said, I trust the CNBC report, the congressional report. 1.4 million jobs will be lost in the short run. I thought the whole point of the raising the minimum wage was to help people be financially stable and independent, not put them out of work.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, always good to see you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Phil.
We'll be right back. right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.